What is that? I feel very tall. I gotta admit, I don't look my best in this video. This isn't my best, so if this is the first video you've ever seen on my channel, then hello, my children. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today's video I have wanted to make for quite some time, but I haven't made it because it's a topic that's a little bit scary to talk about. Yeah, and it's kind of one of those weird things that like you don't necessarily want to put on the internet, but I want to. I do want to put this on the internet. I want to talk about it. I think it's important, and that is my mental health. Okay, so first of all, I don't want this to be romanticizing mental health issues and stuff, because there's quite a bit of that on this platform. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna like lay all the disclaimers out here. Other disclaimer, I'm not diagnosed. I've never seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So everything that I'm talking about is either stuff that I have like researched on my own, like on the internet and stuff, or just based on my own personal experience. So none of this is coming from professional authority, whatever. I'm going to link some things down below that just have more information on what I'm going to be talking about in this video, because this video is not going to be like a super long elaborate thing. It's just going to be talking about my personal experience, but I want to leave some links down below so you can read more about it and do your own research and educate yourself. And another disclaimer is I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh my god, I'm sad so I have depression, or I get scared sometimes so I have anxiety. I don't want to, I don't know like what the word is, but where you, it's like you oh my god, what is the freaking word? Undermine. I don't want to undermine mental illnesses. You guys understand. We're going to be talking about my social anxiety. First of all, what is social anxiety? I will tell you. Social anxiety. This is just the first thing that came up. A chronic mental health condition in which social interactions cause irrational anxiety. I think the key word here is irrational. Okay, so symptoms. So these are some symptoms, but someone with social anxiety doesn't have to have all of these symptoms, and these are not the only symptoms that somebody with social anxiety can have. So talking to strangers, speaking in public, dating, I feel like that could also go with like making friends, like dating and making friends, or like meeting new people. Making eye contact, entering rooms, using public restrooms, or I feel like any kind of public place sort of. That's like kind of more intimate, I guess. Is that weird? I don't know. Going to parties, eating in front of other people, going to school or work, and starting conversations. Okay, there's also another thing I want to read. All socially anxious people have different reasons for dreading certain situations, but in general, it's an overwhelming fear of being judged by others in social situations, being embarrassed or humiliated and showing it by blushing, sweating, or shaking, accidentally offending someone, or being the center of attention. Okay, so those are just what the internet has to say, and like that website sort of clarified that it doesn't, that's just a general, those are just general terms. So obviously not everybody, you know, has the same experience or like the same symptoms. Okay, so let's talk about my thing and why I think that I have social anxiety, or why I feel like I get socially anxious. Pretty much all my life, I've always been more of a reserved person. I don't like saying that I'm shy, because I do feel like when you use your words become your thoughts, and then your thoughts become your beliefs. So for example, if people when you're young tell you that you're shy, or you get kind of labeled as being a shy or awkward person, then you start to tell yourself like, oh, I'm just shy. And then you also kind of make that as an excuse, and then you believe that you're shy, and so because you think that you're shy, you act like you're shy, and then you're just always shy. So you never can like change that. But obviously like traits are different than an actual mental health condition, so I don't want to like blur those lines, because you know, like being sad is different than being depressed. Being nervous is different than having social anxiety. So like there's definitely a fine line between, you know, having a mental illness and like having an actual human emotion. But it can get a little like there's some gray area sometimes, and I feel like it can get a little bit confusing. But anyways, like I said, I'm not a professional, so I'm just gonna kind of talk about my experience. So like I said, I'm just more of an observant person than I am like an interactive person. I don't like to say things unless I have something to say. I don't like to just speak out loud unless it's necessary to do, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. I think that a lot of times people just mindlessly, you know, words just fall out of their mouths a lot of the time without having a thought as to what they're gonna say. Whereas I like to keep my thoughts to myself unless I feel like what I'm going to say can like contribute or add to something. So I've never been like a very outgoing person who would just spark up a conversation with someone just because I felt like it. For as long as I can remember, there's certain situations that have always given me a dreadful feeling inside. And the thing is like, I don't know what is normal for someone to feel, or if maybe these feelings that I have are normal for people to feel. All I know is this is how I feel in situations, and I don't think everyone can relate. So for example, going to school has always given me a sense of dread. I want to say every single day I would go to school, and I know in like my last, I made a video about my high school experience and I said I hated school, and I think that probably contributed to why I hated school, because going to school like every single day, just driving to school and getting out to the front and, you know, knowing that I was about to walk onto a campus that was full of tons of people, it just gave me a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. The first day of school is always the worst. And like as the year would progress and stuff, and like I had kind of like a stable group of friends, or like if I knew someone was there that I could immediately talk to, it wouldn't freak me out as much. But just going to school and getting like dropped off into this sea of people always gave me this sense of dread and this like nervous, anxious feeling inside. Also, going to birthday parties. When I used to go to birthday parties as a kid, I would just always have a really anxious, nervous feeling inside. It would just, I felt scared, and I felt like just not comfortable at all. And then also now, like birthday parties now have turned into like, you know, parties, and I just remember like going to house parties in high school and stuff, and like just driving to the house and getting out and, you know, walking into the house was always like that same exact feeling. So basically any type of situation where I'm going to an event or an area where I know there's going to be a ton of people that are sort of like my peers, that sort of thing has always given me that feeling inside. And I don't really know how to describe it. It's just like a feeling of sort of dread and panic and anxiety. Another thing that's always given me that feeling as well is calling people on the phone. My entire life, up until still currently, calling somebody on the phone is something that I will put off until I absolutely like can't put it off anymore. I will find every excuse to not have to call someone on the phone. Most of the time, like if somebody calls me and I answer, it's not as terrifying or scary. It's not as bad, but it is still like nerve-wracking. But having to call someone, and not so much like if I have to call like my mom, obviously, like I don't even, you know, think about that. If I have to call like a friend, I don't really think about that either. It's not a big deal. But when I have to call somebody to ask them something, like if I needed to call to make an appointment for like my dentist or like a hair appointment or something, that is when it freaks me out to the point where I have to hype myself up for it. Like I literally have to, like, as if I'm gonna jump off a cliff and, you know, jump off a cliff to jump into like some water. I have to hype myself up to call somebody. I will actually a lot of the time have to write down like the key things I'm gonna say, because as soon as somebody picks up, I like completely blank on what I'm gonna say. Like I don't even remember why I'm calling, or like my words start stumbling. Like let's say I needed to make a hair appointment. Calling on the phone is way more nerve-wracking for me than actually going into a salon and talking to someone and making an appointment like face to face. For some reason, if it's like between talking on the phone or talking in person, the phone is like always the scarier option. And I don't know why that is. I think maybe it's because I can't see who I'm talking to, so, and I think it's more like they can't see me. And for some reason, I feel like there's more pressure on like what you're going to say, like your words, because they can't see you. So all they can do is listen to you. And for some reason that like makes me panic. So anyways, these are things that I've always had. And I never really thought that I had social anxiety. I just kind of thought like, oh, that's just the way that I am. Like I'm just shy. I never really thought, like it always bothered me. I've always wished that I was more outgoing. I've always had friends who are really outgoing and friendly and just, you know, they can just kind of draw people in. They're very like, they can just speak and they don't have to like think about it. For example, my mom can literally talk to anyone. She can spark up a conversation with anybody and just keep it going for hours on end. And it baffles me. Like, I don't know how she does that. I don't know how people can just do that. It's like seriously like a science. Like, I just can't understand. It's like astrophysics or something. Like, I have no idea how you just can do that. Like I said, those are the things that I've always known, that I've always dealt with. And I've never really questioned it up until, I would say, once I started traveling, actually. So when I lived in Sydney, which I lived in Sydney for a year, like basically a year ago. And I don't know if it's because I was living in a big city or if it's because I didn't really have that many friends. But for some reason, living there kind of just made my social anxiety so much worse. So my boyfriend and I lived in an apartment, and the days where he would go to work and I wouldn't be at work and I would be home, I would just be, a lot of the time I would be scared to leave the apartment. And the thing is where we lived was pretty much on like a big main street in Sydney, in like this little kind of like a suburb area, but like a main street where there's like tons of shops. So like the second you walk, I knew the second I walked out of the door, I would see tons of people and I would be around people and kind of be immersed in this like city hustling, bustling life. There's like buses and taxis and cars driving by, and it's just very, you know, a lot of stuff going on. And the thing is like, I'm a very independent person. I love to be alone. I love to be just by myself, but for some reason, like being alone around other people is very intimidating for me. And there was like this old man who lived in our apartment building. He took care of the apartment. He was really, really nice, like so friendly. He would always get our packages for us, and he just like, you know, took care of the apartment building and stuff. And yeah, he was really, really friendly. He would always ask us how our day was and stuff. But like, this was the most harmless man in the world. Like the most friendly, harmless, little old man. He was so cute. And for some reason, if I knew that, because like sometimes he would kind of walk outside around by our window, like you would just see kind of his shadow. He would be taking out the trash or sweeping or just, you know, doing whatever he was doing. If I saw that he was out there, I wouldn't leave our apartment for fear of like seeing him and him saying hello to me. Like literally all he would ever say to me was, hello, like, how are you? Or like, how's your day? Or nice weather or something like that. I remember one time I was out all day and like I was coming back to the apartment and I was walking around the corner to like basically to cross the street to go to our apartment, and I saw him standing in front of the gate sweeping or something, and the only way to get into the apartment would be to pass him to go into the gate. And I knew that I would have to, you know, walk by him and see him, and he would probably say hi to me. And so I literally just like walked around the corner and I just kind of sat there and I literally waited for him to go inside until I went back to our apartment. So that's what I'm saying. That is an irrational fear. That is not like, why, like, because in my head I can ask myself, what are you afraid of? Like, this man is not a murderer as far as I know. He's nice. I've talked to him before. He's not gonna do anything to me. And no matter how many times I told myself or asked myself, like, what am I afraid of? And the answer was, I have no idea. And that's the thing, is like, it doesn't make any sense. Or same with like calling someone on a phone. Like, what's the worst that they could say to you if you're asking them for something, or, you know, you wanna make an appointment? Like literally, there's nothing they could possibly say. So my social anxiety basically in Sydney, I would say, was at its all-time peak of being the worst. And like, obviously some days would be better than others. I don't think that it had to do with the fact that I was in another country and I didn't really know anyone, because that isn't what freaks me out. I really, really do thrive off of being independent and just kind of like doing my own thing. So I don't have any explanation, and that's why it's so annoying and frustrating, is because it's like it's like people want to just tell you like, oh, well, you know, just face your fears, just do it. And it's like I was reading on this social anxiety thing online, and it was like, you know, people tell you to face your fears, but people have social anxiety face their fears multiple times every single day, and yet we still have social anxiety. How many times have I called somebody on the phone? How many times have I had a random conversation with a stranger? How many times have I walked outside and walked by a stranger and smiled and said hello, or, you know, bought something and had to talk to the cashier? And like, how many times have we had conversations with strangers or faced our fears? We do it every single day. Like, our entire life is literally facing our fears. And that's not the solution. I don't really know what the solution is. Obviously, like, talking to a psychiatrist or a psychologist would probably help. I haven't really done that yet. I kind of I'm kind of just starting to sort of learn about this because it wasn't something that I thought I had until very recently. I just always thought like, oh, this is the way I am. And I just recently started to think like, I don't think that's a normal, like a normal thing. I think maybe that's, you know, something else. So that was when I lived in Sydney. I don't live in Sydney anymore, and my boyfriend and I are doing long distance now. And what I've actually noticed is since we've been doing long distance and since I've been back home in the States, my social anxiety has actually gotten significantly better. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that since my boyfriend and I aren't together, I relied a lot on him for socialness. What do you call it? Social interaction. Yeah, I relied on him a lot for social interaction. We sort of depended on each other. We were kind of like, oh, well, we don't have to go out and, you know, hang out with friends or meet new people because we have each other. We already know each other. We don't have to go socialize and we can just stay inside and watch movies. So since we've been doing long distance, I feel like it's kind of helped me in a way. And it's not like it's his fault. Like, he didn't cause my social anxiety. I already had it. But it did sort of just being like socially dependent on somebody didn't like kind of made it a little bit worse. So since I've been home, I've actually been very social with people I know. So a couple other things is social anxiety and any other mental illness looks different for everybody. Like, not everyone has the same symptoms. It can totally look completely different than other people. There's also, I think it's called specific social anxiety and then like general. This might be wrong, but from what I remember, I think it's called like specific social anxiety and then general social anxiety. So specific social anxiety would be when you get social anxiety just from like a certain specific sort of situation. For example, talking in front of people, or like giving a presentation in front of a class, or speaking up in front of people and kind of having all the attention on you. I know there's a lot of people who have that fear of speaking in front of people. I think that's like a pretty, not a normal thing, but I think that's like a common thing that a lot of people have. And then maybe that's like the only thing that scares them, but like, you know, hanging out with friends or going out and, you know, just being social in general, or like talking one-on-one to a stranger isn't as nerve-wracking. And for me, I'm actually the opposite. So speaking in front of people, I remember like in class when we had to, you know, raise our hand and say something, or if we had to give a presentation, I used to love that. I used to thrive. That was my thing. I loved talking in front of people. I loved giving presentations. I loved, I loved just speaking up, and I actually love being the center of attention, which is really strange coming from someone who says that they have social anxiety, which I know is like kind of confusing and makes no sense. But like I said, it can look different for everybody. So there's definitely things that do freak me out and then things that don't. Another thing that I've noticed is it depends on the person or people whom I'm talking to or interacting with, sort of like with the degree of how bad my social anxiety is. So with peers, people who are around the same age as me, especially girls, for some reason guys aren't as intimidating as girls, or I feel more comfortable having a conversation with guys than I do with girls. And part of me thinks that it's maybe because I grew up pretty much in a family of all guys, other than like my mom. I've grown up with brothers and male cousins, and I basically didn't have any female like people growing up in my life other than friends that I made. So I don't know if that has anything to do with that, but that was just like the only thing I could come up with. Or maybe it's just because for some reason I feel like I can't relate as much to girls. I don't know, it's weird. Like I don't know. These are like my observations. So like I said, peers. For some reason, peers, like talking to people my age, in my kind of like generational group or age group, that is way more nerve-wracking than talking to adults or authority figures. Which, another thing that I read in about social anxiety, it kind of sounds like it's opposite to what is usually common. Usually people with social anxiety, I don't want to like group everyone together because like I said, everyone's different. But I did read that a lot of times people with social anxiety get like it's scary for them to talk to authority figures, and that really causes like, you know, kind of triggers their social anxiety. But for some reason, talking to authority figures or adults or people who are older than me, I don't know why, it's easier for me to do that. And I don't know if it's like, I feel like I can relate to them more, which doesn't make any sense. Like, I feel like with peers, there's more of a pressure on me to act a certain way. And maybe it's like, I feel like I'm being judged. It's like this irrational fear of being judged. And I've definitely always had this sense of like wanting to be a people pleaser. I want people to like me. I want people to respect me. I used to hate getting in trouble at school because I wanted my teachers to really like me. So that's another big thing. And like with social anxiety, it's like you feel insecure at all times, like everybody's watching you. And like I said, I'm a very observant person. So I think me being observant also makes me extremely self-aware to the point where I am constantly like taking the situation and comparing it to how I'm acting and like looking at myself from an outsider's perspective. Like, is what I'm saying weird? Am I being awkward? Is this right? Like, what do these people think of me? And I feel like that's probably kind of a weird thing to hear, especially if you guys have been watching me for a long time, because I feel like I come off as a pretty confident person, and I still think I am a confident person. But it's just it's just something that I deal with and that I experience. And I don't think that it means that I'm not confident, or it doesn't mean that I don't love myself, or you know, that I'm not a secure person with who I am. And like I always say, like, oh, like you shouldn't care what other people think about you. But then with my social anxiety, it almost contradicts that, because you're constantly afraid of like what people think of you. So it's kind of this big conflicting thing in my life that I'm still comprehending every single day and learning more about and kind of balancing out and figuring it out. I'm still in the process of learning who I am and what I want to be and who I want to be and all this stuff. So yeah, I definitely think I'm going to be making more videos about this, because it's a big weight off my shoulder to just talk about this, and it feels good to just sit down and talk to you guys about this and tell you sort of what I've been going through. I don't want to say I hope you guys can relate, because I don't wish these like feelings on anybody, but I do hope that if you can relate, that this helps you feel like you're not alone, I guess, or that you know that everybody goes through, you know, everybody has their own issues or their own things. Because I do feel like depression and like kind of anxiety in general is talked about a lot on YouTube, but I haven't actually seen a lot of like social anxiety being talked about on YouTube or in social media in general. So yeah, hopefully this kind of starts a conversation. I would definitely love to read your guys' comments or just anything you have to say down below. This wasn't actually as hard as I thought it would be to talk about. I'm glad that I talked about this. I'm glad that I opened up about this, because it's been a video I've been wanting to make and something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. So anyways, that is all I have to say for today. So I'm just gonna end the video here, but I do want to keep talking about this and sort of take you guys on my journey with like my progress and take you guys along with me on the ride and show you guys sort of how I deal with this, and we will learn together. I will take you with me. And thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys so much for your support. It means everything to me. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.